Where to put your CSS code? Where does it go? In our last title, we had an embedded style sheet, and that means it's in the HTML document, only controlling that single HTML document. But we have the options for external style sheets, embedded style sheets, or inline styles. An external style sheet is very powerful because what happens is you have 100 pages and you link to an external style sheet. So if you want the footer to be yellow one day and green the next day, then you can go into your external style sheet, change yellow to green, and in 100 pages everything changes. Fonts change, everything you want. Everything it's like remote control. The whole site changes automatically. In an embedded style sheet, you're only controlling that single page, and then inline means that you're putting your CSS right inside the body tag of your HTML document. And it's almost like that game, scissors, rock, paper. An external style sheet is far away. If you have 100 pages, but you want 25 of them to have a little different style, then you can embed that style in the style sheet, and it overwrites whatever's happening in the external style sheet. And then if you have an embedded style sheet that's overriding the external style sheet, well, then the embedded overwrites the external. But if you have an inline style in the body of the HTML document, it overwrites the embedded and it overwrites the external. So which is ever closest to the object being manipulated, the image, the box, the text, whatever, that's why they call it cascading style sheets. The power rolls down given the closest element. So let's make it an embedded style sheet and see how it goes. We did this in the last title here. We've got a footer, some content, footer, content, header. We have an H1 tag up here that we made red instead of default black. And we're going to make an external style sheet. So let's just go into our code. And let's go up into the head of our document. Here's where our embedded style code is. And here we go. I'm going to save my file, made some changes. And I'm going to go File, New. And here we go. Dream, we were saying, hey, Build a Geek, what kind of page do you want to make? Well, I want to make a Css page. And I'm just going to say Create. And here we go. Now we have a blank CSS document. It's untitled. And I'm going to go File, Save As. Now, what I'm working with right now is in my folder called CSS, but it's common. It's very common for people to make a separate folder just for your CSS. So I'm going to call it My CSS Styles folder. And I create that. And then in my CSS Styles folder, I'm going to call this Bill's Styles. You call it Freddy's Styles, Jimmy's Styles. You could just call it CSS Styles. You can call it whatever you want. I'm good to go. So I have this external style sheet. It has nothing in it. Notice this code right here. In a couple titles back, we had an HTML comment. Well, this CSS is a different language, like French and Russian, and this syntax uses comments, or it makes comments differently. Here, to leave a note to yourself, you say / blah blah blah, and let's type something. Leave a note to myself. blah, 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 asterisk /. That is a CSS comment. It affects the code in no way. It's a note to yourself. Dreamweaver's put this in here to let us know, even though we went File, New, and selected CSS. Anyway, so in case you're really not on top of your game, Dreamweaver and Adobe leaves you a little note to let you know that yes, you created a CSS document. So I'm going to save this. I'm going to go back over here and I'm going to copy this code. And before we move along here, notice this CSS, it starts out style type CSS. We're in the HTML document. This document reads HTML. So what we're doing here, style type CSS, we're telling the HTML document that whatever happens below this tag is CSS. The syntax is different, so it's telling the HTML document how to read this code, which is CSS syntax code. But I'm going to copy this code, go into my CSS style sheet, and I'm going to paste the code. Now we're in a CSS document, so I can get rid of this. We notice the file extension is .css, so the CSS file knows that this is a CSS file, so I can get rid of that HTML stuff that we had there before, and I can save this. Let's go back into my HTML document and let's delete my CSS style stuff that was up here in the header tag. Now it's gone. Let's look at our page. Nothing's there. Our CSS is gone, and now the HTML document doesn't know what to do with our header, content, footer, and wrapper. It's just all blank. It understands the H1 tag, that's HTML, but it doesn't understand what we had done before. So now for the first time we're going to open our CSS Designer panel. This is a very handy dandy panel. It's very good for controlling your CSS, and I'm going to go Windows CSS Designer. Here we go. The first peek for many of the CSS panel. Now, the CSS panel, when you first open it, it'll look like this. It has what sources you're directing to, your media queries, we'll talk about those later, what selectors you have, the properties of any selectors. But if you make this thing a little bit wider, it's very handy, if we can get it to go, because then all the properties show up over here. You'll see it in a minute. But what we're interested in is connecting our external bills styles.css to this HTML document. So from the CSS panel, over here, I go over here, and I'm going to add a CSS source right here. And right here it says create a attach an existing CSS file. So here we go. And I'm going to browse, and I'll go into my CSS folder, open it up, go into my CSS styles, and here it is, billstyles.css. Let's open that sucker. Okay, it says my CSS styles, bill style sheet. I'm going to link it, and I click OK. And now my page is back to normal. The HTML can read the CSS even though it's in a separate style sheet over here. Now if I go into my code and go into the header tag, notice that there is what we call a link attribute. Link hyperreference the path to my style sheet. It is a style sheet, it is a CSS style sheet, so this code right here is telling this HTML document where my style sheet is, And the cool thing is in my CSS panel, if I click in here now, here is Bill's CSS styles. And if I click that, it shows me my wrapper, my header, my content, my footer. And now that we're in the CSS Designer panel, if I click, let's say, content, then over here in properties, it shows me all of the properties for my class called content, or I can do the same with wrapper or header or footer. And I can go through here, which we will be doing quite shortly, and assign all kinds of wonderful CSS attributes to any selected class ID or HTML tag from here. This is very cool. Now, let's come out of here. Go back into design mode, and let's put another H1 tag here. I'm going to type in hi there again. And this is in an H1 tag. So let's go back. And we've redefined all of our H1 tags to be red. Right here. Oh, notice up here in the properties, we can click this for text. Here's our red text. So if I want to change the color of our H1 tags, I can make it blue. There you go. It's changing all the H1 tags to blue. Let's make it back to red. They all turn red. All of them globally, we're changing them through our CSS panel. And actually the CSS panel is actually rewriting the CSS style sheet over here. But let's make an inline style. I'm going to save that. Notice many times, as opposed to save, since you're working with an external style sheet, you may want to go save all, and that will save your external CSS style sheet as well as any changes you made in your HTML document. But check this out. To make an inline style, I'm going to go into the code, and here I want this H1 tag right here to be a different color than our upper H1 tag. And there are other ways to do this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say class equal sign quotation mark green. And this is a style that I have not created yet. And this is an inline style, so we have an external style sheet that's telling the head tag to be red right now. But if we make an inline style right here, then we can make our class green. Now the thing is, in our style sheet, green is not defined. It's a class. So I come in here, and I'm just going to type period for class, green, add a couple of curly braces, come down, and then I just put in color, colon. Actually, I could type in green. yeah, you can type in green, blue, you can type red, but as you know, the eye can see 16.7 million colors, so what I might do is be a bit more specific and choose one of these, and you can see the hexadecimal value is 093. So I'm going to do that, plug that in. So now we've defined a class called green in our HTML document. We're asking our H1 in the H1 tag in the document. We're calling upon the class green. And now if we go into our document, click away to deselect, we have a red H1 tag from our external style sheet and a green H1 tag being controlled in line.